For our project, we choose France as the country for our study and L'Oreal as the company to analyze. First, we have background of France. France is located in Western Europe with Paris as a capital. The country is well known for its fashion, beauty and cosmetic industry. It has population about 68.7 million people in 2026 and is one of the world's largest economic with major industry including tourism, manufacturing, service and cosmetic. In this project, we will analyze France's economic and L'Oreal business operation by applying microeconomic concept with a focus on L'Oreal shampoo products.
France operates under a mixed economic system. This means it combines elements of government control with a robust private sector. In France, economic resources are owned by both the state and private entities. To ensure public welfare, the French government stepped in to provide public and merit goods that private sector is typically unwilling to produce, such as public transportation and road. On the flip side, individual firms and industry enjoy the freedom to own wealth and make independent economic decisions. Provided they pay their taxes to the government, this dual approach ensures that French economic activities remain stable, organized, and balanced.
For the next one is the introduce to L'Oreal. L'Oreal was founded in 1909 by Eugene Teller, a French chemist who developed the first safe hair color formula. During the 1960s and 1970s, the company introduced the preference hair color brand and its famous slogan, "Because I'm worth it." In 1918 and 1919, L'Oreal expanded its product range to include makeup and skincare to meet consumer changing needs today. L'Oreal is one of the world's leading beauty company, operating in more than 150 countries and focusing on innovation, digital technology, and also sustainability.
Now, let's discuss the factor affecting the demand for L'Oreal shampoo. There are three main factors that influence consumer demand for this product. The first factor is consumer income. When consumers have higher income, they are more likely to spend money on premium or high-quality products. On the other hand, if income decreases, some consumers may choose less expensive shampoo brands. For example, during COVID-19 pandemic, some consumers received lower salary than before. So, considering these situations, the demand for the product decreased because they might choose shampoo product that have affordable price. The second factor is the price of substitute goods. Substitute goods are products from other brands that consumers can buy instead of L'Oreal shampoo, such as chlorine and Vichy. If the price of this brand shampoo increase, more consumer may switch to L'Oreal. However, if substitute brands become cheaper, demand for L'Oreal may decrease. The third factor is consumer preference and taste. People's choice can change based on trend, advertising, or product quality. If more consumers prefer L'Oreal, the demand will increase. However, if preference shifts to another brand, demand for L'Oreal may decrease. Next, let's look at the three main factors that determine how much shampoo L'Oreal can supply to the market. First is the cost of production. If the cost of chemical ingredient, labor, wage, automated manufacturing machinery, packaging, and global transportation increase, it can directly reduce profit and discourage production of L'Oreal shampoo. Second is the level of technology. By investing in automated factory, L'Oreal can speed up production and packaging, so they can increase their ability to meet global demand. Finally, we have supply and sourcing reliability. L'Oreal relies on a global network for raw material. If supply faces delay, inflation, or shortage, it can disrupt production and reduce the volume of shampoo manufacturing. Next, I will explain about market equilibrium of L'Oreal shampoo. Market equilibrium is the point where the quantity demand by consumer is equal to the quantity supplied by producer. At this point, there is no shortage or surplus in the market. Looking at the table and the graph, we can see that at a price of 8 euros, the quantity demand is 2,500 bottles and the quantity supply is also 2,500 bottles. This is the equilibrium point because demand and supply are equal. Now, let's look at what happens at a lower price. For example, at 2 euros, consumers want to buy 4,000 bottles, but producers are only willing to supply 1,000 bottles. This creates a shortage because demand is greater than supply. Next, let's look at what happened to equilibrium when the market changes. In this case, the level of technology has increased the supply of L'Oreal shampoo. Because of this technology increase, the supply curve shifts to the right, moving from QS1 to QS2 based on the graph. As a result, the equilibrium price dropped from 8 euro to 6 euros, while the equilibrium quantity increased from 2,500 to 3,000 bottles.
Okay, so for the next, I will explain the price elasticity of demand (PED) and price elasticity of supply (PES) for L'Oreal products. So first, let's look at the PED first. So we use this formula to measure how responsive the quantity demanded is when the price change. Based on the calculation, the PED value is 0.13. Since the elasticity is more than 0 but less than 1, the demand is inelastic. This means that even though the price increased from Rm2 ringgit to Rm6 ringgit, the quantity demanded only decreased from 4,000 units to 3,000 units. This means consumer will continue to buy their product because the change in demand is relatively small. So for the next, we will look at the PES. This measures how responsive the quantity supply is to a change in price. From the calculation, the PES value is 0.5. Since the value is also between 0 and 1, the supply is inelastic. This means that when the price increased from Rm2 ringgit to Rm6 ringgit, the quantity supply increased from 1,000 units to 2,000 units, but the increase is not very large. In conclusion, we both know that the demand and supply for L'Oreal products are inelastic as their elasticity values are less than 1. Okay, so for the next, I will explain the factors influencing the elasticity of demand and supply for L'Oreal products. So first, let's look at the elasticity demand first. So the first factor is luxury versus necessity goods. L'Oreal products, especially personal care products such as shampoo and skincare, are considered essential by many consumers. Even if the price increase, customers will still continue to buy this product because they need them for their daily routine. As a result, the demand is inelastic. The second factor is consumer habits. Many customers are loyal to L'Oreal because they are satisfied with the quality of the products. They are less likely to switch to other brands even if the price increase. Therefore, demand remains relatively inelastic. Now let's move on to the elasticity of supply. The first factor is time frame. In the short run, L'Oreal cannot increase production immediately because production requires time and resources. Therefore, supply is relatively inelastic. However, in the long run, the company has more time to expand production, making supply more elastic. The second factor is technology. L'Oreal use advanced technology in its production process. This will allow the company to produce product more efficiently and increase output faster when demand or price increase. As a result, supply becomes more elastic. In conclusion, the elasticity of demand and supply for L'Oreal is influenced by the nature of the product, consumer habits, the production time frame, and the use of advanced technology. Okay, so for the next, I will explain the real-world data for L'Oreal. Based on the graph, L'Oreal's revenue increased from 25.84 billion in 2016 to 44.05 billion in 2025. This shows that the company has experienced steady growth over the years. The increasing revenue indicates that consumer demand for L'Oreal products remains strong and consistent. Even when price change, many customers continue purchasing the product because they trust the brand and value its quality. Therefore, this real-world data supports our earlier finding that the demand for L'Oreal product is relatively price inelastic, as consumers are less sensitive to price changing. In conclusion, L'Oreal continuous revenue growth reflects strong customer loyalty and stable demand in the market.
Next, I will explain consumer behavior in France. Before purchasing a product, consumers usually compare the quality, price, and brand reputation to get the best value for their money. This reflects the microeconomic concept of utility, where consumers choose products that give them the highest certification. L'Oreal attracts customers by offering high-quality product, a trusted brand, and a wide range of beauty and personal care products. However, during period of inflation, some consumers switch to more affordable shampoo brands instead of exclusive one like L'Oreal to reduce their spending. Therefore, L'Oreal needs to compete with both premium and mass market brand by providing good value and meeting consumer needs.
Now let's shift our focus to how wages are determined in the French workforce, specifically looking at a perfectly competitive labor market framework. In this model, the market is characterized by a massive pool of individual employers and employees. Because of the market is so vast, no single entity, neither one large firm or individual worker can influence the market wage rate. They are all price takers, meaning that they must accept the current market rate. Therefore, the equilibrium wage rate is purely determined by the intersection and continuous interaction of aggregate labor demand and labor supply. From a business perspective, how do companies decide how many people to hire? They follow the profit maximization rule. A firm will continue to hire workers right up until the point where the marginal revenue product of labor equals the market wage rate. To break this down further, the core driver of labor demand or labor productivity and the market price of the output being produced. On the other hand, labor supply is driven by population size, the worker actual skill, and the
Okay, so for the next, I will explain the example of L'Oreal shampoo distribution based on the labor market. According to economic theory, wage in a perfectly competitive labor market are determined by the interaction between labor demand and labor supply. This means that employers hire workers based on their productivity, while workers choose the jobs based on the wage offer. In this market, both employers and workers are price takers, meaning that neither side has the power to set wages on their own. For L'Oreal, many production workers have similar skills and can move freely between factories. The company also hires production operators, machine technicians, and logistics staff to ensure the manufacturing and distribution process runs efficiently. So overall, this example shows how L'Oreal operates in a labor market that closely resembles perfect competition where wages are mainly determined by market force.
Now let's examine the factor of influence wage rate differences from demand and labor side. During peak manufacturing cycle, the demand for industrial labor rise dramatically when the market demand for factory workers spike while the labor supply remain completely constant. It creates a competitive push that drives equilibrium wage upward. Conversely, this system is highly cyclical when the peak industrial season ends. The intense demand for labor drop off as a result, wages dynamically shift and decline back towards their original baseline. Next, labor supply. Starting with labor abundance, in many industrial regions of France, the supply of manufacturing labor is exceptionally high. This is because entry-level assembly lines require minimal technical skills to operate. This massive pool of unskilled factory workers create oversupply, which ultimately puts downward pressure on manufacturing wages. However, the market reacts very differently when a shortage occurs, in sharp contrast to entry labor line. When specific industrial regions face severe labor shortage for highly technical operation, the script flips in this scenario, wages scale up significant as companies compete to attract and retain qualified, highly skilled.
Okay, so next I will explain the factors that influence wage differences among workers, which are skills and also productivity. So let's look at the first factor, which is skills. In the labor market, workers who are experts in specialized fields such as machine operators and machine technicians are paid with higher wages. This is because their roles require a specialized technical skills that cannot be easily learned by everyone. Due to the high level of expertise required, the supply of these skilled workers is relatively scarce, which naturally drive their wage up compared to unskilled labor. So for the second factor is productivity. From an economic perspective, a person who generates a higher output is highly valued by firms. Workers who are highly productive contribute more directly to a firm's total revenue and profits by handling tasks efficiently and mastering their working technique, such as operating advanced tools, because their marginal revenue product is higher. Firms are willing to reward them with higher wages to reflect their efficiency and contribution to the business.
Lastly, I will summarize our microeconomic report on L'Oreal shampoo in France. Firstly, type of economic system in France is operating under a mixed economic system, which is combine a mix of government and also the private sector. Secondly, the factor that affecting in demand of L'Oreal shampoo is consumer income, price of substitute goods, and consumer preference and taste, while the factor that affecting in supply of L'Oreal shampoo is cost of production, level of technology, and supply and sourcing reliability. For the market equilibrium of L'Oreal shampoo, the market equilibrium is at €8 and the quantity equilibrium is 2,500 bottles because the demand and the supply are equal. For electricity, both demand and supply for this L'Oreal shampoo is inelastic because the electricity is more than zero but less than 1. Why the factor that influence electricity in demand of L'Oreal is luxury and necessity goods and habits. Also, the factor that influence electricity in supply of L'Oreal is time frame and technology. Next, consumer behavior in France is influenced by factors such as price, quality, brand reputation, and economic condition like inflation. Overall, understanding consumer behavior help business like L'Oreal develop effective marketing strategy, maintain customer satisfaction, and stay competitive in the France beauty and personal care market. Lastly, the factor that influence wage rate difference is demand and labor supply, scale, and productivity.